a business. Now, we have received several hundred ideas over the last 2 weeks, and they have all been classified into 4 different groups, and you will see more about that later. I've read every one of the business ideas that you have sent. In fact, it was me, the one who classified them by topic. Now, this is an interactive webinar. We want everyone, including all the attendees, to be able to respond to questions. There will be 15 questions. And we are going to start now with the first question. So if you go in the chat room to the link that you will see, you can click on it and you can respond to the first question, which is, why did you join this event? Was it because a friend told you that he or she was joining? That's answer A. Was it because it was recommended by a teacher, a counselor, or a professor? Or was it because you saw a post on social media, on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Instagram? As you can see, you're able to see all of you the results live. What we are going to be doing is the question will remain, but I'll keep going to save time. But for all the questions, it will be the same process. We will keep capturing all your responses until we move to the next question. What you can see here is that to be recommended by someone was a major reason. And remember that when we speak about business. So about myself, my name is George Meneroya. My career has been with Procter & Gamble, Tetra Pak, Nivea, and now I work in Capital Equity. I work as a vice president of finance, global controller, and CFO. I spent about half of my career at headquarters in Switzerland or New York, and the other half in local countries, managing operations somewhere between 20 million in revenue and 2 billion. I lived in 9 countries in Asia, Europe, Latin America, and now here in the US. Now, the way that I like to manage business is to go and meet local clients and customers. I've been now to 193 countries. And if you want to click on this link, you get to see all the passport stamps of every place where I've been. Now, once per week, I do something that I really love, and that's how all this came about. And that is to teach one class at NYU. And I'm also quite open to contacts from LinkedIn. I have about 16,000 now. And for those of you who are in the meeting, if you send me an invite, I'll make sure to accept it. I would like to show this chart because the first part of what you are going to see is the exact same material that my students at NYU see. The acceptance rate at NYU is about, is less than 13%. And the tuition is on the left-hand side. If you were to pay for a class like the one that you are having today, the tuition of this session will be about $500. Now, the way I teach that class is that there is no textbook. In the first session, what students do is they get to pick a company that they like, and then we learn finance by looking at how companies make business decisions. You guys have voted in over 60 companies, and the top 3 are the ones that we're going to use today. And that will include Procter & Gamble, Nike, Disney, Berkshire Hathaway is there, and a few others. McDonald's is one of them for those of you who like the food business, and Estée Lauder for those of you who like the cosmetics business. So this is going to be split into 3 main groups. The first one will be about a lecture, so to speak, about financial concepts. Then we are going to take a break, and we are going to have the chance of you to ask questions in the Ask Me Anything part. And then the last one will be about the coaching on the different business ideas that you have. Before I move on, let me do a process check. And Vika, is everything fine with the meeting so far?
Yes, George, everything is fine. But if you could just clarify to the attendees that as attendees, they cannot rename themselves, put their audios and videos on, and we'll upgrade them to panelists as and when the webinar progresses.
Great, excellent. So thanks for clarifying that. And you can share that in the chat room as well. So in the first part, we are going to be looking basically at about 6 main financial concepts, which are interesting for you to learn about. And the way that I have set up this is that we are going to be looking into pricing. We are going to be looking into foreign exchange. And let me just share my screen again so you can see the subtitles. Yeah, there you can see them. We're going to look into how to gather and use information, market research, and many other topics. So the first topic is that one of pricing. And the way I explain this is I show my students this slide, and they are able to see that in the US, someone who works in marketing makes $78,000. Now, if you live in New York, you make $110,000 or 41% more. But if you live in El Paso, Texas, you make $60,000 or 28% less. So the question that I'm going to ask you, not now, I will show you more data and then you'll get to vote, is if you were living in the US, would you sell at the same price in New York than in El Paso, where people make 56% less money? There is a company called L'Oreal, and they make this skincare cream. And they sell it for $20 everywhere in New York or Hoboken and in El Paso, Texas. But again, the income per capita in Hoboken or New York is 4 or 5 times higher than in El Paso, Texas. So what do you think? Should we sell at the same price in New York than in El Paso? Or since in El Paso people make less money, should we sell at a lower price? And you can vote now. Okay, please continue voting. It seems that most of you feel that we should sell at different prices. Now, let's think about the concept of local, national, or global price list. Now, let's go with global. So once I was working in Nogales, Texas, and my colleagues told me that the American citizens cross the border and they go shopping in Mexico. And I told them, no, it's the other way around. People from Mexico come to the US, and they told me not for medicine. For medicine, we go to buy it in Mexico. So I changed my ticket and I stayed over the weekend and I did it myself. This is me crossing the border to Mexico. All the pictures that I will show you are pictures that I took myself. And when I got to the other side, what I found was this, a hotel. And so tourism is very important for the Mexican industry. And so I asked in the hotel, excuse me, where are the pharmacies? And the hotel employee went like, oh, you had too many tequilas. I said, no, I really need a pharmacy. So he said, well, take that door on the left and you will find some pharmacies. And I did that. And when I got out of the door, I saw this and thought, yeah, this is what I'm looking for. And then I walked around town and I went to 5 pharmacies and I collected some data. So this is one of them. I took pictures from all the data that I collected. Now, there are several students from Denmark today. And what I'm going to show you is the price of a product that is produced in Denmark for the entire world. Now, this is insulin. It's something that people with diabetes, they must have or they die. And in the US, this product is sold for $460. And it's sold in Mexico for $60 or 7 times cheaper. The exact same product is not produced in Mexico or the US, it's produced in Denmark. What do you think? Some of you are going into the food business. You have different ideas. This is the price of a Big Mac in different parts of the world. In the US, $5.77. In Russia, 68% less, is $1.81. And in Switzerland, $7.29, is 29% more expensive. What do you think? Should we sell it at the same price? How much lower? 68% lower or a bit lower in some other markets? Some of you want to create products that can be sold in different countries. What is interesting about the iPhone, for those of you who picked having the same price, is that it's sold at about the same price anywhere in the world. For this one, for about $1,000. There is a minor difference, but it's not 300 versus 1,000, it's 900 versus 1,000. It's basically the same price around the world. And finally, many of you are coming up with apps. And this is one app called LinkedIn Premium. And the cost of this product, when you buy the premium version, is about $30 US or euros. But you can also buy it from India for less than $19, or from Brazil for less than $9. You can be sitting in New York and you just do a quick change and then you buy it at the Brazilian price and then you go back to the US version of it, which is exactly the same anyways. So for the apps that you are creating, what do you think? Should you have different prices or one price? And what I propose to get some feedback from the panel is, I will ask you guys if you have any comments on that. Just unmute your mic.
Can you hear me, first of all?
Yes, who's speaking? Sorry.
Yeah, that's Azamat. I'm having
Azamat, yeah. Hey, Azamat, Kazakhstan. Yeah, welcome.
Yeah. Right now I'm in Moscow though, but yeah, I can see the price differences compared to US. And as I live in the region where everything is less expensive than in your world, and I can confidently say that, like, there should be some sort of price that is close to $10, like, for subscriptions, especially in this region. Otherwise, people get very greedy and they don't pay over this. And if you're able to create an app, for example, and set everywhere the price of close to $10, maybe 12, maybe 8, like this range, then that's going to be perfect. You're going to set up in the whole world like this. Okay. But of course, you can charge more in more developed countries.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks so much. So now let's go into inflation and foreign exchange. Now, the boring definition of inflation is on the screen. I prefer to think like this. When there is inflation, I get to buy fewer chocolates. And but in 2018, the global inflation rate was 3.6%. Now imagine that in a global company, and this is what we do, we were to tell all the countries that they could increase salaries only by 3.5%. Then in reality, what we are saying, if you live in China, where inflation was 6%, that we are decreasing your salary by 2.5%. The inflation this month in the US for the year was 4.2%. So if we increase salaries by 3.5%, in reality, we are decreasing salaries by 0.7%. In countries with a lot of inflation, the situation is a bit more complicated. Now, this used to be the biggest bill, the 500 euro bill, but then there is another one from Zimbabwe. A few years ago, some of my colleagues were hosting a conference in Zimbabwe, and I had heard about inflation, so I joined them. And what happens when you go to international hotels is that all transactions are in dollars or in euros, so you don't really see the local economy. But I got out of the hotel, went around, went back, and was able to grab this bill, which is a real bill printed by the Federal Reserve here in the US. And the bill is for $100 trillion. This is not millions or billions. This is $1 trillion. And in class, I passed the bill around, and the students can't grab it and look at it and so on. Now, you could argue, well, this only impacts like large companies, but not so much small businesses or vice versa. So let's look at two examples to see the impact that inflation has on small business owners and on workers. So the first idea is about Jenny, who is a business owner. And one day she got very excited because she had gotten a contract with a major retailer to make shoes. She will sell the shoes for 140 and they cost to make 100 RMB. Now, she was so happy about it that she asked her friend, Wendy, to come work for her. And so Wendy was getting paid 1,400 and her expenses were 1,000. So she was able to save a bit. But the problem was that there was a lot of inflation every year and Jenny was unable to increase prices. See, the cost went from 100 to then 134 by 2014. And by 2017, the cost was higher than the price at which she was selling. She did go back to the retailer, but the retailer told her, listen, we cannot take a price increase because if we do, our consumers will go and buy it from the dollar store. And many other small businesses are willing to produce for 140. Then Wendy will talk to her and say, listen, you have to increase my salary because my expenses are going up. And Jenny will tell her, I can't because I am unable to sell to this retailer at a higher price. So what I would like you to remember is that even a relatively small inflationary increase of 4%, what we have today in the US, over a very long period of time will have a tremendous impact in small business and in the salaries of people. How about foreign exchange? Well, let's use another example. This is about Luis, someone I know who is dating Jenny, someone you will meet in a few slides. Now, Luis has 3 friends who live in Mexico, and their parents want to watch this Rolex watch, which is not available in Mexico. So they told him, listen, if you buy it from us, we'll give you a 10% commission for the hassle. The watch sells for $10,000 and they will give him $1,000 on top of that. So Luis made the math. He looked up the exchange rate, which was 18, and he figured for $33,000, I will be getting this number of pesos. Now, he's very careful. So he went to the Rolex store, he took a picture, this picture, and he sent it to them. And they said, yeah, that's the one we want. Then he calculated the cost, and the cost was $30,000. So he was going to make $3,000. When he was at the Rolex store, Jenny was with him. And so the salesperson told her, oh, would you like to look at a necklace? And she tried on this necklace. This is her picture. And this necklace cost $2,200. So what Luis thought was, I'm going to make 3,000. All this is happening on February 14, which is Valentine's Day in the US. With the profit I make, I'll buy it for her. But the little tiny problem was that the exchange rate over the next 5 weeks went from 18 in 5 weeks to 26. So by the time he landed at Newark International Airport and went to this office to change the money, he only got $20,000 instead of $33,000. What else do you think that Luis could have done? And now here you can write your comments, since it will be hard for all 400 of you to speak. You can just type whatever comments or things you think he could have done. So the size of the font will increase for those of you who are using the same words. I see that. It sounds like some of you think that he should call his dad. Debit card. Get a loan. Something about immediately, that sounds good. Wait, many people have said that in the past. Okay, you can keep sending your comments and we will download all your comments. Now, Forex is a major issue for companies and it appears in the cover of major newspapers all the time. On this chart, what you see is the impact over 15 years of inflation, about 2%, wages, about 2%, and pricing, about 2%. But on the right-hand side, you see that for many different countries, the impact of foreign exchange is 5 times higher. It's much greater than inflation. So this one is for Europe, Asia, and Africa. That's Turkey, Russia, India, the Euro, and China. And that's a cumulative effect. This is for the Americas, Argentina, Brazil, Mexico, and even Canada. And that's a cumulative effect. So the point that I would like to make is that Forex, which seems to be something quite foreign, is actually something very critical, that you have to bear in mind. One of my students from India mentioned that he knows someone who buys Nike shoes in the US and he resells them in India, and he suffers from that, right? When there is a depreciation of the Indian rupee, since he paid for it in dollars, he gets a negative impact. Now, I will take now a minute to see if there is any feedback or any comments coming from the audience. Okay, I can see that you're all awake. This is recorded, by the way, so we get to see all your faces later. So, all right, we'll go back to the slides. Now, one thing that I would like you to learn today for your business idea is how to get and use financial information. The main reason is that it will increase your credibility. When you talk to your parents, your friends, or investors, if you were to say, and you are, for example, making apparel or shoes, well, the cost of making shoes for Nike is 55%, you will sound more credible because people will be impressed about the fact that you took the time to go and look up all these numbers. If you're in the food business, you want to do the same with McDonald's, as an example. If you are in the apps business with Apple and so on, it increases your credibility. It's very easy to get this financial data, and it's free. And there are 3 ways to do it. One is to go to a government website, which is quite boring, or the company website, which is much easier. The second is through brokers. And the third one is to become a shareholder. To get the information from a company website, just go to that website, for example, Starbucks, search for investors relations, and then you can download all these reports. The other thing that you could do is to open a brokerage account if you're 18. Now, it's good for you to know that international investors who don't live in the US, in most countries, or for most countries, are able to open these accounts. And there is a link here to an article I wrote where I compare all the different brokers and explain how you can do it. And the advantage that you get by doing this is that these accounts are free. You don't have to pay money to maintain these accounts, and you only need to deposit $1 to open them, and you get free research, which will enable you, for example, to compare a number of companies in terms of the different ratios. And the third way to do it is to become a shareholder or the owner of a company. When we lived in Europe with my daughters, I used to take them to Europa Park in Germany. So we will get on this train going from Switzerland to Germany. That's my daughter in the train. This is a long distance train. And we will go there, have fun. These are both of them. But once I got transferred to Tokyo, so we went to Disney in Tokyo, and I was very upset. I was upset because the price of the tickets was very high. They were very expensive, and the lines were very long. So it occurred to me that what I could do if I was upset about it is just to buy the company. And that's what I did. Now, there are no fees to buy or sell stocks in the US. And it's actually cheaper to buy, when I made this slide, to buy Disney, the company, or a share of Disney, than to buy an admission ticket to Disney. The price now has changed for Disney, but you could become the owner of Apple for $124, Nike for $130, McDonald's for $230 and Berkshire Hathaway for $300. You could buy one share, which will make you the owner of one of these companies. How many of you have heard of Warren Buffett or Berkshire Hathaway? About 80% of you. So Warren Buffett is well known because if you would have bought one share of his company back in 1980 for $300, it would be worth $300,000 today. The return on investment, and we will learn what that is in a few minutes, has been 20% per year for 50 years. Now, when you're the owner of a company, you get to go to a shareholder meeting where all the owners meet. And in the case of this company, they had about 40,000 owners coming to the meeting. And what you get to do is you get to send questions, and then a reporter will pick about 30 of these thousands of questions. That's what we have done with you guys today. We have used the same process. You all sent over 300 questions. We have picked a few, and that way we have a diverse level of questions and opinions and so on. Now, in the case of Berkshire Hathaway, they pick the reporters a few of those questions, and they post them in the newspapers. I was there a few years ago, and I was quite lucky that my question got picked, and you can go to YouTube and see what the question was and what the response from Mr. Warren Buffett was. And overall, in my opinion, the trick was that we were investing with another partner who was more in private equity and just thinking about making money. And that's not what we do in Berkshire Hathaway. We think more long-term and so on. So I was challenging Mr. Buffett about that. Now, what happened next is that due to the nature of my question, the Wall Street Journal wrote about it at 3 p.m. and the Financial Times the next morning. And the CEO of this company called 3G, those of you from Brazil will be more familiar with him, promised, he called for a press conference that day. That's the first time they did that. And they promised not to do it again. So the point that I want to make is that when you become a shareholder, you have a little tiny opportunity to make a difference, but you may actually be able to make a difference. And here is proof. Any questions or comments?
I think it's a very useful piece of advice because especially where you pointed out that it's actually cheaper for you to buy one stock than get a ticket and have a good day in Disney. I mean, in order for you to, I think I heard a saying, like, if you want to be rich, you invest. And if you want to be poor, you spend. So I think this kind of aligns with that kind of example.
That's a very good point, Mark. And typically what students ask me is, okay, so if I buy a share, do I get to go to Disney for free? And in the case of Disney, no, you don't. But in many of the cosmetic companies, when you become an owner, they give you a bag when you go to the meetings, which is worth several $100s. Now, I am a shareholder at Berkshire Hathaway, and they own an insurance company called Geico. And because I own shares, they charge me less to buy insurance. So sometimes you do get some benefits. And many consumers like that those free products that they get from most cosmetic companies. Okay, let's go.
I had a question.
Yep.
What is the difference between share and stock?
It's the same thing. It's different names for the same thing.
Oh, okay.
Good question. So now let's go into something that you may say, oh no, that stuff, that is super boring. And that is how to read and use a profit and loss or income statement. If you're looking like this, don't worry, it won't be so bad. What I would like you to remember is that a profit and loss is a statement that summarizes the sales, cost, and expenses during a period of time, a quarter or a year. This is the P&L for Apple. Now, I'm going to ask you a question now, and I'll take feedback from the panel. And that is, can anyone make a P&L? Can this farmer, I met her in Bolivia, make a P&L? Any feedback, panel?
Before I give any feedback, are costs and expenses two different things?
They are.
You made difference. So
Yeah.
could you explain?
Yeah, so in her case, the cost will be what she pays for the tomatoes, the lettuce, and so on. And the expenses are the fixed costs she pays, for example, rent, right? So when she sells more tomatoes, her cost goes up, but no matter how many tomatoes she sells, the rent, that type of expenses remain the same. So in her case, it will be pretty easy to make a P&L. All she has to do is look at the sales, which she gets from the lettuce and the tomatoes, the cost, which she pays for lettuce, tomatoes, potatoes, and expenses, and that's it. Now, how about this guy who is collecting money in Venice Beach, California? Can he make a P&L? I think the translation is saying piano. It should say income statement. Yeah, that's better. All righty. So yeah, anyone can make a P&L. And I'll show you how easy it is to make a P&L or an income statement. Now, why would you want to use a P&L? Isn't that super boring to spend the whole weekend doing that stuff? Well, a P&L will help you sell more units at a higher price, which were produced at a lower cost. If you're the farmer, you will know when you sell more tomatoes, and you will be able to see how to reduce waste, what you have to throw away. It will enhance your credibility when you talk to investors or to friends. And in some cases, you have to get it to comply with the law. In class, I explained that the cost of setting up a P&L goes from $1 to $100 million, depending on the different tools that you use. To save time, we'll skip that. What I would like you to remember is that there are three main sections on a P&L. I would like you to, when you look at a P&L, to split the P&L into these three sections. The first one is sales, which I will show in green because you get cash from it. The second one is cost of sales. And the third one is expenses, all expenses. And the difference is the net income or profitability. Now, based on the companies that you picked, I'm going to show you 5 examples. So this is the P&L for Apple. First, sales. Second, cost. Third, expenses. And the difference is the net income. It'll be hard for you to look at the dollar value, so I'm going to show you all the numbers as a percentage of sales so that it's easier for you to read. Number 2, Nike. Sales, cost of sales, and expenses. And the difference is net income or profitability.
Is that the net profit margin?
The net income, to be technically correct. Yeah, so what you get after you have paid everything, taxes and everything else, the one at the bottom. Now let's do McDonald's. Sales, cost of sales, and expenses. So when we look at the cost of sales, what we are saying is that when they make a burger, the cost to make the burger with the bread and the lettuce and the tomatoes and so on is about 1/2 total of their sales price. And then you have expenses and the net income after tax. Now Disney, sales, cost of sales, expenses, and the difference is the net income. And finally, Estee Lauder, sales, cost of sales. This one's the lowest. So in the cosmetics industry, the cost to make the product that you buy is not that high, but they spend quite a bit of money on marketing and things of that nature. So the expenses are higher. And then the net income or profitability. So I have shown you how to read any P&L from any industry for all the companies, or sorry, for all the business ideas that you have submitted. Now let's go into Jenny finally. And this is based on a true story. So Jenny is a student at NYU, and a friend of hers produces high quality made to order shoes. This is my classroom at NYU. And Jenny sells those shoes for $1,000. She buys the shoes for $300 from her friend in China. Now, once per month, after taking the class, Jenny goes to Newark Airport for a reason, gets on an Emirates flight for a reason, visits her mom for a reason, collects 10 pairs of shoes for a reason, and flies back to New York City and sells the shoes. And I always like to point out that in addition to doing all that, Jenny always turns her homework on time. Now, the reason why I said for a reason is that for everything she does, there is a business reason. And when we have time, we go through them. Now, let's see how she will make a P&L so that you can then make your own P&L. If you think about it, the sales are easy. 10 pairs of shoes at $1,000 each is $10,000 or 100%. The cost is $300 each, 10 pairs, $3,000 or 30% of sales. And expenses, in her case, is the ticket, $4,300 or 43% of sales. So her profitability or net income is $2,700 or 27%. What I would like you to do is what she does. She looks at other major companies and compares her numbers. So Jenny says, I want to benchmark with Coach. And she grabs their sales or the revenue. And she says, okay, that's 100%. Their cost of making the shoes is exactly the same, 30%. The expenses that they have is exactly the same, 43%. And the ratio of net income is exactly the same, 27%. How about that? Any questions or comments?
I have a question about P&L and the information about getting about the brokerage and the shareholders and the stuff like that. Does it mean that we need to, like, if we want to start a business in a certain thing, should we find companies that also specialize in those things and learn from them?
Correct. Yes, I highly recommend that because Sarah, look, it's free. You can just go and read about them, right? So why wouldn't you do it? Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Okay, so now, if you haven't left yet, now when I show this slide about the balance sheet, you're going to go like, oh, that stuff. Do I really have to listen to this? But you've seen in the P&L that it's not that bad the way I'm doing. So just hold on for 2 minutes and then you'll make an exercise. So a balance sheet is a statement that summarizes what we own. We call that assets. What we owe to others, we call that liabilities. And what we have invested, our capital or equity. Now, to read a balance sheet, I will recommend that you remember these 5 main business drivers. First, receivables. In red, because it uses cash. This is the money that your customers or your clients owe to you. Second, inventory. This is all the stuff that you have on stock. Third, property, plant, and equipment. Your office or your warehouse or your computer. And on the other hand, things that don't use cash. Payables means the money that you owe to others. And debt, the loans that you have taken. So let's do one example only. This is the balance sheet for Apple. So we see their receivables, number 1, inventories, 2, and property, plant, and equipment. On the other hand, we see payables and debt. Now let me show you the ratios. For receivables, 10% of sales. And for inventory, 1% of sales. This is the lowest by far. Basically, no other company has this. And the way they achieve this is rather than to have all the stock, they have their suppliers deliver to them only when they need the stock. It's called just-in-time inventory. So if you were to do that with your suppliers and you were to tell them, no, just bring it to the store on Tuesday and you sell it on Tuesday, that will reduce the amount of money that you owe to others instead of keeping stock for 30 days, 60 days, or 90 days. Property, plant, and equipment, payables, and debt. Now, when you look at these 2 ratios, 10 plus 1 is 11%, and payables is 21%. What this is saying is that Apple is able to get all the stock, sell it to all the customers and consumers, collect from all of them, and then pay their suppliers. This one is 21%, which is higher than 10 plus 1% or 11%. Any questions?
I would like to know why Apple chooses to keep a certain amount of stock instead of keeping all their products in the strategy, destined, and time inventory. Why would they keep inventory that way if they have another strategy?
Well, first, they're able to have their suppliers hold their inventory for them, right? And they can just say, you have to bring it tomorrow. But if we had more time, I would have shown the numbers for Estee Lauder, the cosmetics company. And they keep 90 days of inventory rather than 3 days. And one of the reasons is that they don't really know what you want to buy. So iPhone has fewer products compared to Estee Lauder. But at Estee Lauder, they have to have many, many different products. So that forces them to have more stock. That was a good question.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
So this just-in-time delivery option, which you just mentioned, which Apple does, for smaller businesses, wouldn't it be a bad idea because they don't sell as many SKUs as Apple does, and buying in less demand means more product cost?
Correct. Yeah. So that will actually help.
I have a question.
Right. Yep.
So would this BS sheet be different for a company that creates or develops apps compared to Apple and a company which actually sells a product and
That
not
is
a
correct.
digital?
Yeah,
Would
yeah.
it be different?
It will be different. So in that case, what you will have in stock is all the products that you are developing and they haven't been launched yet.
Okay.
It's not something physical, right? But it's all the time that you have spent building that.
Okay,
Can I
thank
ask a
you.
question?
Yeah, go ahead.
So what happens if the supplier doesn't deliver on time during just-in-time?
That's a very good question. So it's tricky, right? That's a risk that you have running a supply chain like this. We had the speaker from McDonald's a few weeks ago, the global head of supply chain. And despite the fact that they also have only 3 days of inventory, he mentioned that they never run out of stock. That it could be that maybe one day you go to a store and they don't have it because the machine is not running, but they're able to manage that real well. And I think it's true, right? In general, they don't have that problem. So when you have real good processes, you're able to manage that.
So like this kind of supply and delivery system would not be suitable for pharmaceutical or vaccination companies, as like if a supplier fails to supply with a product, it would take lives.
It'll be harder, but we're going to go into that case now. So you'll get to make a decision about that or take a vote. I'll show you what the case is. So I've been doing this case, by the way, for 2 years. I've been only teaching for 2 years, but before the pandemic, I presented this case to the students. And so the situation is this. Imagine that Jenny believes that for Christmas, she will be able to sell 50 pairs of shoes instead of 10. But she's not sure though. Maybe she will sell 100, but she can only get 50. Now, imagine that day when everyone is at her apartment trying to get the shoes, there is demand for 100 pairs. And she only has 50 pairs of shoes. And think that this is your business now. To whom would you sell? Who would you prioritize? All clients, new clients, so that you can get their business, or we just do it at random? What do you think?
Could you please repeat the question?
So the question is, who would you prioritize if you have a limited supply of vaccines or shoes, right? Would you give it to all customers who have been buying from you forever? New customers, that way you get their business, because the old customers, you already have them, right? But now since you have this problem and no one else has it, if you were to sell to them, you will get them as customers. Or would you say, it's too hard to decide, I will just do it at random? So answer A is for all customers, B for new customers, and C is at random. So about 100 of you have responded, and most of you believe that you should prioritize all customers. If we had time, we will go through this. This one was about whether she should take credit cards. She's only selling cash now, but we need to try to save time, so we'll skip that. And then the other thing that we look in class is how could she get cash to finance her business. Now, let me go into the concept of market share, but let's take maybe one question before we move on, so that if there is anything else that you would like to have clarified.
I have a question. So you said you're gonna talk about that the poll that we did like a little bit later, but like according to like your experience, so how loyal were have customers have generally been, like especially with regards to like consumer goods? I mean, because there are many competitors there, right?
So the data that I have and the experience that I have with many different businesses in different industries is that if you provide your customers with exceptional customer service, you are going to make a lot more money. About 98% of our customers come recommended by others in the businesses where we make the most money. So there is a direct relationship between really taking care of your customers, having loyal customers, and being able to sell at a higher price. So let's go now into...
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
I'm having a question.
Yep.
So previously you spoke about the business sheet of Apple, which is an electronic company. It's an essential right now in our daily life. So you spoke about the inventory and you said it is the lowest by far by 1%. Since it is an electronic, it is really essential for everybody. But then can we compare this with an automobile company? Because will the inventory stay same, or will it increase or decrease as?
So in that industry, in the automobile industry, it will be higher because they have different products. We call that SKUs, or stock keeping units. Now they would also try to use just-in-time inventory, but despite that, because they have to have more SKUs, it'll be higher. So in one of the companies where I work, we had 400,000 SKUs that I had to look after, compared to, I don't know, 400,000. So that plays a role. Okay, let's go now into the concept of market share. I will show you the concept per se, and then we'll go and give you a chance to respond for those of you who haven't yet to the survey with it. So market share is the concept of knowing whether this consumer is buying our products or those of a competitor. So if you're Coca-Cola vis-a-vis Pepsi, or if you make tea bags, your tea bags or the ones of a competitor. There are two measures of market share. Volume, or unit market share, means how many units she's buying of our product versus that of a competitor. And value market share is the number of dollars that she's spending in our products compared to a competitor. So earlier this week, I was talking to a colleague in a company, and she was telling me that her competitors had increased prices by 30%, and she was able to increase the number of units by 5%. And then I told her, well, then you're losing market share, because in value terms, their market share has increased by 30% and yours by 5%. So in general, people in marketing, they like the unit market share because they say, we don't care about dollars. The fact is that this consumer is putting our products on the shopping cart. And people who are more into finance, they like the value market share because they argue, look, to the bank, we take dollars or euros or rupees. We don't take statistics. My opinion is that both are important. You have to look at both of them. So for those of you who haven't taken the survey yet, you can go ahead. I will activate it again. And you can tell us which, or the reason why you will pick each company. It should be activated by now. So I'll try to see if I see any results coming up to double check. Yeah, results are coming up. Perfect. So the question was about what was the primary reason why you bought a product from different companies. And if you look at Apple, most of you said that is because you trust the brand. that was much more important than anything else, than price or social media or influencers. You can continue to vote. We will keep updating the results. For Disney, trust in the brand was important, but so were TV advertisements, right? About 22%. Among the main reasons why you bought a Disney service. We have collected over 1,500 responses for this, not just from you, but from other people, older people, younger people, and in many, many different countries. Now for a Nike, where we have more responses, what you see is that in this case, trust in the brand is much more important than price, but recommended by someone I trust is also somewhat important. And influencers is important, but it's only 15% compared to trust, which is more than twice that ratio. For P&G, there are many different drivers. So TV advertisements are important. That your mom or your friend told you that it's a good product is important. And influencers, not so much. Trust in the brand is important. Now McDonald's. So here, price is much more important than for any other brand. Advertisements are important. Influencers are not important. So they typically invest $20 million on influencers. And when you look at it, that's not the reason why people are buying McDonald's products. Price or trust are much more important. And finally, Estee Lauder. Here, that is recommended by someone you trust is the most important reason. Influencers are important, but this is a key reason. You ask your friends, what do you recommend? And they tell you to buy that product, and then you buy it. So I will try to show you a summary with the data as of last night of the data that we have collected. These were the results. And what you see is that it's a lot more important that people trust your brand compared to influencers. And it's a lot more important that you get recommendations from friends or from family. And the overall trust in the brand is twice as important as prices or the price of your product. If people trust your brand, that will make the reason why they buy the product. In general, right? For McDonald's, price is more important, but in general, price is not the main reason why people compare to trust buy products or make business decisions. So I'll take a minute now for a question or a reflection, and then we'll go into the last part of the first part.
I would like to know, what is your take on competitions of like when you're doing the same product, but there are competitions internationally and also nationally?
So, what you want to do in each domestic market is you want to make sure, Sarah, that you appeal to those consumers, right? Now, when you are a global company, one way to think about it is that you want to win in all the different markets. So you want to have your local team in South Africa making sure that they appeal to local consumers, and the same one with your team in Nigeria, Tanzania, and then in Spain and Denmark and so on. That would be the best way to go about it. If you try to say we will make all the decisions centrally, there are some advantages, but you need to make sure that you appeal to local customers. So let's go into the last part, and then we are going to take a break for 15 minutes so that our colleagues can invite more panelists and other things that we need to do. So if you go to Google and you say, what is payback? The answer that you get is revenge. And in financial terms, that is the wrong answer. So it's not this movie or this TV show what we are talking about when we talk about payback. Payback is basically calculated as the amount of time that it takes to recover your investment. You take your investment, you divide it by the cash you save or made per year, and that will give you the payback. So if Jenny was thinking about buying this coffee machine for $1,000 or renting the machine for $500, she could say, okay, if I buy it for $1,000 and I divide that by 500, my payback time is 2 years. It's a very simple concept, and that's why people like it. This one is the one that is most commonly used, so it's important for you to remember, and that is return on investment, which really means the cash you get divided by the investment you made. So if Mary bought this apartment for $1 million and she gets $30,000 in rent per year, that would be 30,000 divided by $1 million, 3%. Now, if you invested in the S&P 500, which is the overall market in the US, the return on investment over the last 10 years has been 13%. You can remember that number because in many countries, 13 is a number associated with bad luck. So if you want to remember the return on investment for the S&P 500, try to think in those terms. So we say that the investment is $1 million, and every year for 10 years, you get $130,000. So 130 divided by $1 million, that will give you a return on investment of 13%. That's how you calculate return on investment. So what I would like to do now is I have activated this slide about what did you learn today that you like most. Let me see if it's, I need to do one thing so that you will be able to see it. And then what we could do is I'll take some comments. Oh, it seems to be working. Great. So I'll go to, we'll leave this open and I'll go to the panel. And we have 5 minutes for discussion. And then what we are going to do is we're going to take a